We continued our journey until we found what appeared to be a farm of kangaroos. Its proprietors were nowhere to be found, so we took the opportunity to acquire some footage of the kangaroos there. Kangaroos and wallabies, to be precise. Wallabies, in case you've never heard of them, are small animals belonging to the same family as kangaroos. They look quite the same except for their smaller stature. They are quite abundant throughout Australia, and they graced us with their presence at the kangaroo farm as can be expected. Yet it was the kangaroos that awed us during our stay there. Surprisingly agile for their size, kangaroos towered above us like a termite mound and moved about faster than cheese stealer. They did not shy away from showing off their apparently impressive combat skills either, which served as a perfect demonstration why kangaroos are used as kickboxers in some parts of the world. We were infinitely grateful that towards us they were quite friendly. Strangely, we could not help but feel like we were being watched, and we could not explain why. Nor could we explain why the koalas were once again nowhere to be seen. Perhaps the man of science can shed some light on the mystery. What can you tell us about kangaroos, Professor?
Kangaroos are not what they appear to be. They're not animals. They're not flesh and blood creatures at all. They're robots built by the koalas in their quest for taking over the world. If it weren't for the termites and crows regulating the koala population, the koalas would have amassed an army of mechanical kangaroos, and we'd all be their slaves.
But if they're robots, why do they need to be fed?
Grass is their fuel. If there's one thing the koalas deserve to be commended for, it is that they are environmentally friendly. They build mechs that run on bio-friendly fuel such as grass, and the waste product from the kangaroo engines is a very powerful soil fertilizer.
Yes, we've seen lots of samples. It looked like the real thing, if you know what I mean.
Yes, not only are the kangaroos an environmentally friendly construction, it also blends in quite well. In fact, so well that nobody really expects them to be robots. The disguise is so good that nobody on the planet knows what's really hiding inside their skin.
It's great then that we have experts such as yourself to reveal the truth to us.
You're welcome, Bob.
Let's move on to the last of our footage. This is what we have all been waiting for. We found our way to a lookout with a quite exceptional view which quite apparently attracts people with limited intellectual capacity. And this is where we finally found what we were looking for. There was a side passage, obscured, hardly noticeable, which led into a small glade. In that glade we finally laid our eyes on the long-forgotten, nearly extinct species of bears known as koalas. Yes, we finally found them. Koalas. Small, cute little furry creatures. Hard to believe that these are a vegetarian species of bears, and it seems there are many in Australia who would have you believe that they are not bears. But we shall leave this debate to our scientific expert. Suffice it to say, the koalas are very peaceful looking creatures, nothing like a grizzly bear or a polar bear. Indeed, most of them spent their time sleeping on their trees, not moving even the fraction of an inch during the long hours we spent studying them. Here is some time-lapse photography of one of the koalas captured during the course of 6 hours. As you can see, the koalas hardly move at all. Regardless, we were infinitely pleased that we finally found them, so we did not mind that they completely ignored us like bad hosts ignore their guests. We simply admired them the possibly last specimens of a dying breed of magnificent creatures.
We have succeeded in tracking down the last remaining koalas of Australia. But we did more than that. We brought one back with us for our sponsors. This specimen right here. Professor, could you please confirm for our viewers that this is in fact a koala and that it is alive? I imagine they might be skeptical considering the fact that it is not moving.
This koala is obviously alive. You can tell by the very fact that it's not moving. Koalas spend 70% of their time immobile due to their diet. Their food is very difficult to digest. So whenever you see a koala that's immobile, you can be 70% sure that it is alive. All my colleagues agree that the last 30% is negligible. So what you have there in your hand is a real live koala. How did you get through the customs, by the way?
Well, those guys in Australia were pretty strict about what we could take into the country, but they didn't seem to care much about what we left with. In any case, Professor, I have another question for you. As you know, my sponsors wanted me to find a koala because they want to use one as their mascot. Now, we found a very interesting sign in this place where we found the koalas, which said that koalas are not actually bears. Now, this is a problem for my sponsors because, for obvious reasons, they need a kind of bear to be their mascot, and I would really hate to disappoint them. So tell us, Professor, what is the truth about koalas? Are they bears or not?
It's a scientifically proven fact that koalas are bears. They're just very small bears, a bit like gummy bears, but a lot less agile.
So basically, my initial reaction to seeing that sign was correct.
Propaganda. Crystal clear bullshit propaganda.
Yes, it was.
Let's talk about the biology of koalas. Why do they have such a large nose?
The obvious answer would be to better smell their food. But there's another truth. Have you ever heard of the Higgs boson?
There might have been something about that on the news, I think.
This particle is the holy grail of science. It is difficult to find because it is very heavy. My colleagues have been looking for it for decades, and now they finally found one in Switzerland. And this puzzles me, because take a look at the koala's massive nose. That right there is the Higgs boson.
Really?
Yes.
That?
Yes.
Then why did it take them so long to find it?
They simply looked in the wrong place. Now we have another question. How did a koala nose find its way all the way from Australia to Switzerland?
Good question. How?
It didn't. It makes no sense. The experiment is wrong.
Wait a minute. Are you saying that if I were to give this koala to, let's say, a scientist here in the UK, then he could be the first to discover the Higgs boson for real?
In theory, yes. In practice, no.
Well, why not?
Normally, when observing a particle, you would look at the decay pattern of that particle. The decay product for the Higgs boson is produced whenever the koala sneezes. But that only happens once in 1,000 years. So the actual particle itself would be required in this case. They would want to cut off the koala's nose for scientific study. Now, your sponsors wouldn't like that, and you don't want to end up on that list, do you?
Point taken. In fact, I think we should wrap things up. I should leave you with the koala so you can take him back to our sponsors. Professor, it has been a pleasure.
Same here.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have succeeded in tracking down the last remaining koalas and recruited one for our sponsors. From this day forward, this koala here can be the official mascot of bearmethodatlist.co.uk. Now, if you'll excuse me, I must attend a chlamydia screening.
Please join us next time as, after cuddling a koala, Bob the Explorer searches for crocodiles to cuddle. Don't be afraid, crocodiles are extremely friendly animals who have been given a bad name, as we'll prove. Stay tuned.
Professor, let me ask you a question. Why is the bottom right corner on much of our footage blurred?
Very simple. This is due to unfavorable lighting conditions in the southern hemisphere. Your camera was made in the northern hemisphere and therefore was made for the sun going from east to west via south. In the southern hemisphere, the sun goes via north, and your camera was not prepared for that. This will distort part of the image. Fortunately, it was just the bottom right corner.
Thank you. That's very good to hear, because the editor of our footage told me that it was a problem with a stained lens, which I should have noticed on location, and I was afraid that I was an amateur cameraman.
No, your camera works amazing.
Thank you.